In 1731, 14 visionaries came together to form a society aiming to make Ireland a better place. The society works to improve the economic and social circumstances of Ireland, essentially by turning ideas into action. The society has sought to do this over the years by establishing art schools, by providing a venue, a forum in which exhibitions of excellence take place. So we show the best of Irish craft, Irish industry, Irish agriculture. Another of the areas in which we have tried to bring emphasis is science and technology. So that's a central way in which the RDS has contributed to this mission. Although the facade of the main building is large, it doesn't intrude on the streetscape or dwarf its neighbours. Its architectural style and materials are grand, but rather than condescend, they lend an air of stateliness to the area. The early years of the society, in terms of its accommodation, I suppose you could fairly describe it as nomadic. The society wandered from different addresses in Grafton Street. I think it was Meckelsburg Street, and it was for a time in Trinity. But I think the key date for us in terms of our substantial accommodation was in 1815. We acquired Leinster House building by Richard Castles, a splendid accommodation which provided us with a great lecture theatre and pursuing research in science, developing enterprise and industry. Leinster House was our base for over a century, in fact. You could say that some of our activities outgrew it. It couldn't cope with the large exhibitions, for instance. In 1879, we acquired the site in Ballsbridge. Soon afterwards, we started to put some substantial buildings there. The main hall was built in 1880 by George Wilkinson, and that is the building which in many ways would be most associated with the Society's visitors, the exhibitions and the other big events which take place in the central space. The story of the Agricultural Hall is a fascinating one to my mind. It was built by Frederick Villiers Clarendon in 1858 as part of the Leinster House estate. About 20 years later, it was actually deconstructed, taken apart and moved lock, stock and building to Ballsbridge and re-erected, and it became our Industries Hall. So that's some recycling, I suppose, of the original building. And as I say, it formed part of the developing RDS estate. This period coincided with really substantial growth in the Society's activities. In 1896, an expansion of Wilkinson's main hall was deemed to be necessary. And we think it was C.H. Ashworth who was responsible for adding pavilions either side of the main hall. These pavilions are the Minerva suite on one side of the entrance, on the other side the Members Club. These pavilions were similar in height to the main hall, but they were brought forward either side, so they formed this kind of U-shaped on plan, really a Neo-Palladian expression. The next building to be added to this rapidly developing estate was in the early 1900s, and that's what we refer to now as the Concert Hall. Patrick Hartnett McCarthy was the architect, and this is the building closest to the city, the extreme right-hand side of our facade as we look at it. And again, a building that would be familiar to many Dubliners. The early years of the 20th century saw, of course, revolutionary change, the emergence of the Irish state. Our wonderful headquarters, Leinster House, was given over to the Irish state. The state gave us the resources to invest in Ballsbridge and improve our accommodation here so that it became a new headquarters. Lucius O'Callaghan was given the challenge of unifying the buildings here in Ballsbridge and providing essentially a new facade, as well as adding a building to balance the concert hall. That was the council chamber, a granite stone neoclassical facade to unify these buildings. And that is really today the image of the society that most passers-by would recognize. Granite must be one of our most durable building materials. I think we'd like to maybe think in the RDS that it reflects some of our values, an organisation that's been continuously, hopefully, doing good in Ireland since 1731. Granite seems an appropriate material, solid, dependable, and maybe with a degree of permanence in this ever-changing world. The choice of the neoclassical style for the facade wasn't a casual one. I think it was deliberate because it was seen to reflect the aims of the Enlightenment, a celebration of logic and order. Symmetry, for instance, was felt to be quite an important element in the neoclassical, although it's interesting that if you look in detail at the society's facade, while it may feel symmetrical, actually in detail it isn't quite symmetrical. The connecting wing between the concert hall and the main hall has 11 window openings, but the corresponding wing between the main hall and the council chamber only 10. The newly built council chamber was designed to balance the concert hall at the opposite end of the range, but the pediments are different. One is triangular, the concert hall, and the other squared. Such architectonic anomalies were somewhat disguised by the strong horizontal lines of the parapet and the string course which divides the upper and lower levels. Geometric shapes are abounding, which also reinforce the overall proportional effect, from the triangular central pediment, rectangular and segmental window openings, to the circular roundels that contain the quirky bestial busts. In the segmental niches above the 3 window openings of the central section of the main hall are representations of other interests of the RDS. Depicting the arts are a painter's palette and brushes, 2 music horns and a lyre. Sheaves of wheat, a rake, a pitchfork and 2 scythes represent farming and agriculture, and a globe standing on books illustrates learning and knowledge. The 2 torches identifying the RDS as leading the way in all of these endeavours. One of the things which strikes me as being really very positive about these buildings is that they really do amount to a very considerable quantum of building. Here in Ballsbridge, on our 17 hectares of site, we have something like 10,000 square metres of buildings. Yet on the facade to the Merrion Road, we have a human-scaled buildings. I think sometimes large buildings can be very unsatisfactory at ground level, that they're very unfriendly to the passers-by. I'd like to think that here in Ballsbridge we have buildings which are accessible and open and friendly. They're behind the railings, not behind a wall, and it's quite a transparent and, I think, human-scaled building.